Good morning, everyone. My name's Phil Swan. I'm one of the business development managers within the Continuing Professional Development Unit at Cardiff University. So welcome to this fifth session on the second week of our spring online school organised by the CPD unit. It's great to have so many of you joining us here this afternoon. While we're just waiting for the last few people to arrive, I'm just going to run through a few housekeeping bits with you. So if you have any technical problems throughout the session, please feel free just to use the chat feature to alert either myself or my colleague Jessica, and we'll try and help you out the best we can. Anything like sound issues, that sort of thing. If your Wi-Fi signal drops out, conscious that you're probably mostly working from home like we are at the university at the moment, do feel free just to reuse the link that we sent you and readmit yourself back onto the session, and someone will be there ready to let you back in. We're going to be doing a questions and answers session at the end of the session, so please feel free to use the question and answers box at the bottom of the Zoom box just to post any questions that you have throughout the session, and I'll pick those up at the end and put those to Catherine at the end for her to answer. We are going to be recording this session and uploading the video onto YouTube, so we do have a YouTube channel for the CPD unit. And we have a back catalogue of all the previous sessions that we've run as part of this spring online school, and also a series of sessions we've done last summer as well. So we'll send you out a link for you to have a look at those. There's some really interesting ones on there. So I think that's enough from me. I think everyone's now arrived for the session, so I'll hand you over to our fantastic speaker, Dr. Catherine Farrell. Thanks very much, Catherine.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Phil, and thank you, colleagues. It's really, really interesting and really good to be here with you this afternoon. The topic that I've selected to talk about, just check, Phil, are the slides okay? The slides are there?
Yes, we can see them. Thanks.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm really pleased to be here this afternoon to talk to you about leading with political awareness. I'm not going to talk politics to you, although politics is all around us, and obviously we have an election coming up. But leading with political awareness is much bigger than party politics, and it's about us being aware of in our leadership, being aware of how we could become more politically aware and actually be better in our workplace. So the point of the talk is to make us as individuals more effective in our leadership. And so they're looking at the list we had this morning: people from health, people from one of the banks, local authorities, Gas Board, National Museum of Wales. We have the Wales Millennium Centre, the Swansea University. So we have a number of colleagues here from the charity sector as well. So that's really interesting. So leading with political awareness is not a topic just for people within the public leadership sphere. It is about colleagues across public, private and third sector. Okay, slide 2. Okay, so the outline of the session, and I will leave time for questions. So it looks like a long list, but I'll be drawing on these kind of topics: leading with political awareness in the context of leadership and the context within which we operate as leaders. Leadership roles, and I'll pull on some private sector and public sector roles there. The challenges we have as leaders, not just in COVID, but the challenges we have of grappling and juggling a load of different things, a number of different challenges at the same time. And then I move into political awareness, the significance of it, political astuteness framework. So that's something that you could take away and draw on and hopefully be able to use. And then at the end, the last slide is about you becoming more politically aware. It's about relationship building, gathering knowledge, being sensitive and understanding. So those are the topic areas that I'm going to be drawing on within the next 45 minutes or so.
Sorry, Catherine, we haven't got the slides on full screen. Could you put them on full screen for us?
Yeah, okay,
Thank
sorry.
you. That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, are we on this slide now with leadership in the middle? Yeah?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so leading with political awareness. So the context of leadership, we talk about motivation, getting goals, teamwork, contribution, and all of this concerns leaders, public, private, and third sector. So there's a lot of things we need to do as leaders. And so political awareness is one of these. It's rarely addressed. And I don't know if many of the people who are on this call at the moment are probably on Twitter, but Harvard Business Review tweeted today, one of the reasons we see far too little emotional intelligence in the workplace is that we actually don't recruit for it. And I would argue we don't recruit for political leadership, for political awareness either, so that we often take it for granted that the people we're going to recruit are going to be able to lead with political awareness. So it's something we don't recruit for. And emotional intelligence, I've just mentioned, it's very significantly related and correlated with political awareness, but it's about leading and managing conflict at work, self-awareness, social skills, and the impact we have as leaders on others. So the context of political awareness is really important. And as leaders, we need to understand our political awareness and also be emotionally intelligent as well, which is significantly related to it. I've drawn out here the context of political awareness because many of the people on the call are in public organizations or third sector organizations. So the public service context, and we are leading, services are delivered on the basis of need. Accountability is one of our key functions. We have to be financially accountable, politically accountable. Services are delivered on the basis of equity and equality and delivered to everybody equally. So that's the context within which we work. Key characteristics of the public service ethos, I mentioned accountability, community responsibility, community service and integrity. We need as public servants to operate with integrity, and we need to be seen to be doing it, and not just seen to be doing it, we need to be doing it as well. We need to deliver services and deliver workplace leadership with integrity. Public leadership, I'll just briefly mention public leadership. When we think about public leadership, generally, we're talking about political leadership. So we think of our elected politicians, so our members of Parliament or MPs, our members of the Senate, MSs, and also leaders within local authorities, the councillors. So we have political leaders, we have executive leaders, and these are people who have been appointed to leadership positions, chief executives of local authorities, health boards, and other public bodies. So people will also be in executive leadership roles, and not just the people at the top. So it's people in leadership roles right at the top, but right through public organizations. And then non-executive roles, and these are people who are chairs and members of public boards, such as health boards, sports councils, fire and rescue authorities, for example. And those of you who are familiar with some of the research that I've been doing, it's really on the non-executive leaders and how people operate within public boards and the level of scrutiny that exists within that. So within political awareness, we have people at those three levels. And then within business and also within third sector organizations, we have people who are in executive leadership roles and also the non-executives, the people who sit on the company boards. So when we think about leading with political awareness, we're thinking of people within the political end of things who are the elected politicians, the chief executives, and also those who sit on public and company boards. So those are this kind of the models of leadership and the levels of leadership we're looking at. And as I said, leadership isn't just people at the top, it's people right through the organization. Okay, so what are the challenges we have as leaders? Okay, so I've 6 boxes here, and I've tried to box off. So leaders, you can read the slide yourself, but really what I'm trying to draw out is really leaders have to work with a wide range of stakeholders, citizens, consumers, politicians, the civil society, and the media. So a huge stakeholder group for all of our leaders. Second one, meeting diverse needs and demands, so public and consumer needs, and also these needs and expectations are changing all the time. As public leaders, we also need to keep up with technological advances and use this to get results. So it's not just about the technology, we need to be able to use it, but what does data tell us? Data needs to give us information. So keeping up with this is a huge challenge. Legislation, and that's the background, that's one piece of legislation I put there, which is hugely challenging, but obviously this is the framework within which we must operate. So leading with political awareness is being aware of the context of our leadership and the challenges that we face, responding to and resolving, we call them wicked issues in public and third sector, and many on the call working in local authorities or in the charity sector will be familiar with wicked issues. Really, really difficult, hard to resolve issues that involve not just one organisation, but many organisations. So for example, crime would be a wicked issue, poverty would be a wicked issue. And so these are really, really issues that we need to have a number of people around the table discussing at the same time in order to resolve them. And we need to not just have the people around the table, but for them each to take responsibility for elements of that. On the last box there, working in a public and a political environment for companies, and for companies' reputation is important. So for the public sector and third sector, working within a public and a political environment is really important. You know, we see in the media, we'll see something happening within a local authority or a health board, and it's, you know, it's on the news tonight. So the leading with political awareness is being able to deal with those challenges. And for companies, it's also about that, but also for them, it's reputation and sales that go with that. So the challenges in leadership are immense. And so what we need to think about is leading with political awareness and being aware of these challenges. Okay, I've used this kind of framework many times, and we see politics at the center. And many of the people on the call probably think, oh, I'm not interested in politics, or maybe you are interested in politics. But whether you are or whether you aren't, politics is essentially all around us. Politics, I often use this kind of idea of politics being about conflict, and I don't mean major conflict and arguments and battles. I'm talking about small conflicts. Politics is simply about conflict between 2 or more people who are looking for the same kind of product or trying to share the same kind of space. Politics can be about 2 3-year-olds fighting over a toy, for example, and quite often one will pull it this way and the other will pull it that way, and the 2 children will come to some agreement, or somehow or other it'll get resolved. Often as parents, we will go in and say, you know, why don't you share this, or you press the red buttons and let your friend press the green ones. So we come to some compromise and we come to negotiation kind of skills are really important. And so the kind of ideas we see on there, democracy, power, I'll come back to, citizens, political. So whether we are interested in politics or not, politics is essentially all around us, and it frames the kind of world we live in. For example, we drive on the left-hand side of the road. At least I hope we do. But often in other countries, they drive on the right-hand side, and those are political choices that the political leaders have made. So there are many choices. And when we go out into a public space, and even in our homes, a lot of that is framed by the legislation and the political decisions that our politicians have made. So the political world is all around us. So let's not ignore it, whether we like politics or not. And, you know, so just moving on. And so into political awareness. So what is political awareness? And Jean Hartley here in the Open University has done a huge amount of work on political awareness. And she talks about it as, she and her colleagues there talk about it as a set of skills and judgments exercised in context for a range of legitimate or illegitimate purposes where there are divergent or potentially divergent interests. And so we have the idea of conflict coming through that kind of definition, a range of different, for legitimate or illegitimate purposes. So a set of skills, so political awareness, a set of skills where there are divergent or potentially divergent interests. So here we need to think of political awareness as, and this is how it is framed then, understanding the interests of different people, reading situations. So when we walk into a group of people, when we walk into a meeting, you know, what's going on in the meeting, who are we talking to, what organizations are they from, what's their perspective on things. So reading situations is about being able to be aware, the emotional intelligence will come in there, building alliances. And so in a meeting when I have got a particular point of view, and I don't mean me personally, but when I've got a particular perspective, I need to, before the meeting, have built the alliances. I need to recruit people. I need to have spoken to people beforehand who also think the same as me. And so that's essentially about building up your support. So when I, in the meeting, raise something that's a little bit thorny, or I'm trying to find out the answer to a particular question in a scrutiny meeting, for example, then somebody else will come in and support me and say, I agree with Catherine. Why are we not doing something? Or why are we doing it this way? Or there are other views on this. Why are we looking at it? So it's about building alliances. And everyone in this meeting, I'm sure, will be familiar with that kind of scenario where we need to build alliances, and then others will join in and develop those points. So understanding people's perspectives, reading situations, building alliances, influencing others. And I don't mean making people do what you want them to do rather than what they want to do. It's about allowing them to see that this is a perspective that has got value, and allowing them to think, well, this is something that could be possible to be incorporated, or something that we could do now or in the future. So influencing others is clearly important. Maintaining long-term strategic goals is also about political awareness. So essentially, where are we now as an organisation? Where are we now as a service? Where is this service? Where are we now in relation to meeting the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, for example? And what are our goals for the future? How are we going to get there? Building consent from political leaders is also political awareness. So if we know that a particular group, political party, for example, or a group of politicians, or a group of people who are in support of something within your local authority or within your community. So it doesn't have to be political leaders, it can be local leaders as well. So building consent. So political awareness is about building rapport, reading situations, and building alliances, and using these kind of skills and judgments about what is useful within that scenario. So being aware politically. Political awareness then is also about the bigger picture within our service. So what's going on? Okay, I know what's going on at my desk today, and I know that I've got these things to do and I've got those things to do tomorrow, and it fits into this framework that somebody's preparing for somebody else. Actually, what is going on in my service? Is this service aiming to be more collaborative with another service? What are the government's intentions for this service? What have the National Assembly for Wales? What has the UK government, what are the UK government's intentions for this service? So what is the bigger national picture? This is quite useful because as an individual, where is the service going in the future, and what's my part in it? How can I prepare myself for the future? So being politically aware is saying, well, how do I prepare myself for the future? What is the bigger picture? Is this service going to be collapsed and reduced in the future? And if it is, how do I prepare the service and me and myself for the next part of my career? So really, understanding the national picture or the business of your service. What is this product? Is it, on an upward trajectory in terms of marketing and support from different consumers? Second point, the agenda of one's organization. What is the agenda of my organization? What does the chief executive, what do the SNT, the senior management team, senior leadership team, what do they think? Where are they going? Who's on the senior leadership team? Actually, what are their priorities? So do we know the agenda of our organization? So thinking about our own organization, what is our local authority? What is the agenda of the health board? And obviously it's all about COVID, but there are agendas that your organization is signing up to without actually formally signing documents. Political awareness, and is also about power, authority, and politics. So here we need to see, well, actually, who's got the power in my organization, who is in authority, and what is the political environment within which I operate. Now, for people in local government, it's easy to see what the politics is. I'm in a Labour council, there's 60 members, 30 from this party, 20 from another, and so on. But actually the wider political environment, what is going on in that? In my organization, who's in power? Okay, so think about your organizations, who's the authority in your organizations? And here now it's people who have the formal authority positions. It's the CEOs, it's the leader for marketing, it's the leader for financial affairs, financial security and accountability. So it's all of these people with formal authority. But stand back now and think, okay, these are the people with the authority in my organization. Are they also the people with the power? And so think more widely now about your own organization, about the power. And people in power in your organization are not necessarily the people who have the formal authority. So think about the powerful people. And in our society, when we think about powerful people, it's the influencer on YouTube, and it's the people who are able to get our children and ourselves as well, actually, to buy the products that they want us to buy. So the power, think about the power and think about who's in control of that power. And so what we then need to be able to do is use political awareness to be able to influence us to lead and shape policy and service at different levels. So with our political awareness skills, what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to lead better, to shape the policy or the service that we operate in, or the consumer market that we operate in. So instead of being led all the time, that we're doing the leading. So instead of just waiting for things to be done for us, as a leader with political awareness, we're much more astute and much more able to and capable to shape our own destiny in a sense. So political awareness skills will take us far. And the importance of political awareness, many people listening here at the moment might be talking about, well, how does this relate to astuteness? Well, actually, these words are all very similar. So political awareness is also called political astuteness, political savvy, you might be familiar with that term, or nous. That person's got a bit of nous. Now, what does it mean? Nous is also about political awareness. They know what's going on, they know they're familiar with processes in the organization, they know how to get things done. So, you know, the people with the political nous are not always the type of people at the top. Often they are, but we know people, we can think of people in our own services who actually aren't at the top at all. They're just people in the know, and these are useful people to know in the organization. So think about them, and actually, I think one of their skills is to think about these people and to work with them as well. So political nous, political savvy, is an increasingly necessary skill for leaders and managers, but it's really been neglected. And we don't think about political awareness when we think about recruiting people for roles in organizations. And as I mentioned earlier on, the challenges of working with a diverse range of stakeholders, with consumers, with politicians, with ministers, and others, we need to, and chief executives, we need to think of our managers. They need to work with a wide range of people who hold formal offices, and those wide range of stakeholders, civil society, that's people in the charity sector, the people in the media, and other third and citizen-focused organizations. So political awareness applies in both the formal organization, but also informal settings. So we think of political awareness, not just, you know, a formal organization, but informally as well. And then moving on to this slide then. So leading with political awareness and leadership with political astuteness is a key part of senior leaders. So as senior leaders, as junior leaders, we need to think about leadership with political astuteness. It's a positive feature, and I've just talked about being savvy, having nous. It sounds a little bit negative perhaps, but what we need to do is be able to turn it into something positive. It's got a vital role to play in organizations, and having, you know, thought about some of the aspects that I've just mentioned, it means having political awareness means, you know, we're leading the organization strategically, we're thinking about where it's going, we can understand where power lies, we understand how to influence people. And so this is a positive influence in organizations. It's a positive feature to recruit people with political awareness. Leaders exercise day-to-day leadership, and this is leaders, public, third and voluntary sector, exercise day-to-day leadership. And all leaders have this kind of balance and dynamic reflected in the image dancing on ice. And this image of dancing on ice, when you think of it, it's actually quite hard to dance on ice. And so leading with political awareness, sometimes it's, you know, it's balancing a whole range of activities, and it's really being careful not to step on people's toes. It's being careful not to drown out arguments, but listen to people and understand their perspectives. And kind of dancing on ice is a good kind of metaphor to think about what political awareness is about. And what we need to do is the combination of managerial skills, the knowledge of our institutions or for our organizations that we work in, and contextual knowledge. Where is my service? Where is my business? And the ethical judgments that are needed to exercise leadership with political awareness. And these are all part of the distinctive capabilities of the most senior leaders and leaders at all levels. And so these kind of dancing on ice, the combination of managerial skills, being able to influence, having the service knowledge, are all really important in political awareness. Okay, so this is the political astuteness framework. And so 5 boxes here. And if you were to think about taking something away from this session, and I can see that I have quite a bit of time now for questions, so I'm happy to address any of these points. So if we were to think about political awareness, this is a framework, then Hartley and Fletcher's framework from 2008, personal skills. We need self-awareness, and I suppose that's the emotional intelligence part. So we need self-awareness of our motives and our behaviors. Understand ourselves is the first part of leadership, and many of you who have been on a leadership course will have talked about self-awareness. What do we like as leaders ourselves? What do we like as people? And so self-awareness is the first part of political awareness and the political astuteness frameworks put forward by these authors. Be able to exercise self-control, be able to understand and be open to other people's views, listening to others, and be curious. What do you mean by that? Oh yes, and if we did that, what would be the consequences in your view? So listening to people, understanding their perspectives and valuing their viewpoints. So personal skills is about our self-awareness. In personal skills, the soft skills. So emotional intelligence, political awareness, these are soft skills. There isn't a qualification in political awareness, although maybe after this webinar today, maybe you wanted to come and do a course in political awareness, but we don't have an MSc in political awareness. We don't have a degree in political awareness, and really what we need to be able to think about is the soft skills, being able to influence the thinking and behavior of others, getting buy-in from others, so not just imposing your view, but sharing a particular perspective and allowing people to understand where those ideas come from. The tough skills are mentioned there as well. So the soft skills, and then the tough skills, negotiate. And I talked at the beginning in that the wordy slide where politics is at the front of that. The tough skills, being able to negotiate. So as people who will negotiate the two children who are sort of fighting the conflict over the toy, negotiation skills are really important. To stand up to pressures from others, to handle conflict, not run away from it. So as leaders at all levels, we need to be able to handle conflict, understand that it's going to be part of our role, particularly as senior leaders. But negotiate and understand and value perspectives. And so it's not about people going away feeling less valued than others, but all of the information is brought to the table and understood by everybody. Reading people in situations, recognition of different interests and agendas of different people. Who are the people who work in your organization, and what is their perspective? Understanding the unwritten codes. And I suppose it's got to be featured that one of the difficulties we've had over the last year in COVID is that we haven't been together, we haven't been face to face, and so it's harder to read situations and people. We don't understand when people, or it's harder to see when people are not happy about something. Much easier to see when we're face to face in meetings and so on. And so we need to pick out the underlying agendas that people have. So sometimes people will be given a particular perspective. We'd like to, as people with political awareness, it's understanding what is their agenda, why are they saying that? It's not just their what they tell us the agenda is, but actually what are their actions? If they tell us they're keen on something and yet all the body language is indicating that they're not, then we need to understand that. So political awareness is also about understanding and using those skills. Building alignment and alliances, I've mentioned already. Appreciation of the context of different objectives and the perspectives of different stakeholders. And as we know, in public service organizations and in third sector particularly, building alliances, we have to collaborate. We're forced to do it. It's something the government want us to do it. We have it through the regional partnership boards, the public service boards, and we have it through lots of different forums. And we understand that in order to help resolve some of the difficulties in society, we have to work together. And so we need to build alliances. So who is the person who's working on my service in a different organization, and build that alliance? And it's not a threat to the people in your organization, but it's essentially about improving services. And I suppose it's got to be said that political awareness is about improving our leadership, but the point of that is to improve the service we deliver to our customers in business, to our stakeholders, to our citizens in public service and third sector organizations. And the last box there is looking ahead. We're, strategic, scanning the future. Where is my service? What is the roadmap? What is the journey? How can I influence this so that we actually have a better service for the citizens and for the consumers who are buying our products? So it's about the analytical perspectives and the capacity to think of possible futures. And that's not, it's the futures thinking we're trying to get to sort of hint at there in terms of building that kind of ability to lead and not be led. So it's ability to think ahead, to lead the service appropriately. And so I don't know, many of you may have come across this diagram before, and here we have, the clever fox, the wise owl, the innocent sheep, and the donkey. We have a number of different animals presented on this, and obviously nothing against the animals themselves, but the owl there is politically aware. He or she has integrity, they're respected, and whatever they do is behaving with integrity. The sheep there follows, they're innocent, but they're not really politically aware, but they're a follower. The sheep is a follower. They're a loyal follower. They act with integrity. The donkey, politically naive, but they act out of self-interest, the donkey. And the clever old fox there is politically aware and out for themselves and getting things done for themselves. Now you could say to me, okay, where do I want to be? Do I want to be that wise old owl? That sheep, I'm not sure I want to be the sheep there because I'm following rather than leading. The fox, oh, that's nasty. That's the nasty end. And those of us in public service and third sector don't want to be nasty to our stakeholders and the citizens we're serving. And so when we look at that diagram and using it, we kind of think, well, where do I want to be? And at one level, that's useful because we want to be, I suppose, in the wise old owl box. But rather than think of them as the 4 separate boxes, we probably need some skills in all of those boxes. And so particularly when we're recruiting people, or if we are a leader ourselves, who in our organization, and obviously you don't write any of this down, but who in our organization is the clever fox? Sometimes in business, sometimes in public service, third sector, we need somebody who's clever to be politically aware, go out, get that thing, bring it back. Actually, this has been the salvation of the organization. We need to use those ideas. We need to use his or her ideas that they've picked up, bring them back into the business and do something with them. And so we need the wise old owl, but we also need the clever old fox. We need sheep. We need people who are followers. We need people who are going to act with integrity. And in fact, we need people in all of those boxes. And so the objective is not to turn, foxes into owls or sheep into owls. It's really to, who in my team, have I got a selection of these individuals across my team? I'm not, the donkey position is, out for themselves and acting out of self-interest. So that's probably the least kind of area that we'd want to work on. But the others, we probably need a selection of those different kind of perspectives within an organization, and certainly across the skills of the people we're dealing with. So that's something you might think about and use in your work. So owl, fox, donkey, and sheep, and the political skills for managers and leaders. And this one now, I'm almost at the last slide, so I have lots of time for question in here. How do we become, as leaders, more politically aware? So whether we're, new in our careers, or new in that particular organization, or, quite senior in our roles, how do we become more politically aware? And so what I've done is I've tried to box them off into 3 different areas. How do we build relationships? And often this is called networking. How do we build relationships? And that's a question I'll come back to in a second. Gather knowledge is the second part. How do we do this? If I'm not used to doing it, how will I start doing it? How do I gather knowledge? How do I know who works in my organization? How do I know who the senior leaders are? And the third aspect then that I pull out of all of this whole webinar is about the sensitivity and understanding. So how do I read situations and how do I do this? So I think across being more politically aware, I think what we need to do is, if you're not doing this already, and I think many will be already along this track. So it's not I'm not doing any of this or I'm doing lots of it. I think everybody will have networks to which they already belong. And I think, we all know the network we're in. And if we don't know the network we're in, it's worth thinking about who we are and who are the people in my service, in my network, in my work area, who think the same as me, who understand the area that I'm working in. And this is people across organizations. So when we go to a conference, who are we talking to? How do we get things done through other individuals? Build relationships. So how do we build relationships? And we build it by getting to know people. It's harder in this pandemic, obviously, with everybody working from home. but it's about building rapport with people, building up relationships with people. And you know, when we're at the face-to-face conferences again, building relationships is about meeting people at conferences. And sometimes this is really difficult to do, because if you walk cold into a room and you don't know anybody, it's really difficult. But I think a suggestion or a little tip might be to sort of go over for the tea and the coffee. You meet somebody there, ask them how their journey has been, ask them about something about, you know, the British and the Welsh and the Irish always talk about the weather. So build up some little connection, and then you'll say, oh, what service are you in? And you'll see they're wearing a badge and they'll talk about something. And so you've already built some sort of relationship with this person, and actually, you know, you'll be able to meet them later on in the conference. So that's always a good thing to do. So build relationships, understand that this is part of your network. And I think if you haven't been doing it, try and do it a little bit more. Many of you will already be doing that. The second part is gathering knowledge. Okay, how do I gather knowledge? Who works in my organization? Well, I think the first thing you need to do probably is to get on your organization, your services, your business's website. Who are the senior leaders? Who is the chief executive? You probably know who this is already, but who are the SLT? Who are the senior leadership team? Who are the senior managers? And work your way through the organization. Who are the significant people in this organization, and what's their service area? Where have they come from? If you're looking for, you know, a promotion in the future, who are the key people? What are their qualifications? And actually, if they've done an MBA or an MPL in Cardiff Business School, obviously they're well away. But, you know, what are their qualifications? And also, you know, will those courses and programs that they have done, are they something that you should do? So how do you gather knowledge? So get on your company, your organization's website. The second thing that I would advise is to use Twitter a little bit more strategically. So if you're not on Twitter already, my advice is to get on Twitter, follow. So for example, in my organization, I'm, you know, senior lecturer in public management. I follow the audit office, the UK audit office. I follow government departments. I follow the Assembly for Wales, the Future Generations Commission, and all of these that are relevant, because what they're doing is they're sending out information that's relevant to you, to me, in our work. And I can come across an interesting report that just lands into my inbox, and I could use that then to say, look, I've just read a report on so-and-so, so-and-so, this is something. And so you can impress your senior leaders and managers. And so you're gathering your you gathered your knowledge, but you're becoming even more politically aware. You know what's going on in your service. You're becoming more knowledgeable about what's going on in your area. You're beginning to know people, or even build better relationships with the people outside your sector, and so on. So gathering knowledge is really important to being politically aware. And that's, I think, so get on your businesses, your company's website, your organization's website, and get on Twitter. Obviously, there are other things you can do as well, but read relevant reports that are in your area, and understand who your minister is. If it's public service, for example, who is the minister for local authorities, who's the minister for finance, and what are their priorities? And as I said, what are their qualifications, and so on. Sensitivity and understanding. And here it's about reading situations. How do you do this? I think you listen more than you dictate. I think you listen to people. You try to understand what their perspective is. And so there's no big sort of secret to this. It's about really you understanding the world that you live in and the people who are around you. Sensitivity is really key here. And so understanding people, reading situations, reading body language. And I think if you become more aware of the need to become more aware, then I think you probably read situations better than you've been doing in the past. So I think as a tool, I think if you could try to think about building relationships, gathering knowledge, and being sensitive and understanding different situations, I think political awareness will flow out of this. So those are the three boxes that I wanted you to kind of take away from the webinar. That's who I am. I run this program in Cardiff Business School, which is MSc Public Leadership, and there's a link to that on the website. So when you get the slides after the webinar today, you can have a look at the course, and my email address is there. So I'm quite happy for you to email me. And we talk a lot in the MSc Public Leadership program, not just about political awareness, but leading with particular skills, management of change, and so on. There's a range of points there on the slide, but I want to leave some time here for questions as well. So follow up if you would like to on the MSc Public Leadership course. And then the references that I've used this afternoon are those, and those will be on the slides when you get them. And so many of those, in fact, nearly all of those are accessible to people outside the academic world. And certainly Jean Hartley has done quite a bit. You'll find that leading Dancing on Ice is quite an interesting report for, the kind of juggling we have to do in our public organisations. So that's all the slides I have for you today. So I'm going to stop sharing and go back to the main room.
Great, thanks very much, Catherine. We've got a couple of questions that have come in, but I'd encourage anyone else that has any further questions, if they would just like to use the Q&A tab at the bottom to post those over the next few minutes, if they don't mind. So the first question here is, it's around political awareness in recruitment and also assessing the skills within a team. So how can political awareness be assessed? Is there a model or a way that it can be measured in some way?
That's the difficulty, isn't it? We don't recruit for it, and there isn't a kind of framework that we could use in recruitment. But I think probably, in our assessments and probably in interview assessments, if we could sort of drill down to how people read situations or give them a particular situation in which to say, well, what would you do in this particular context? And I suppose there's examples to draw on, but there isn't a framework of political awareness. But I would encourage people to think about political awareness and the related concept of emotional intelligence when they are recruiting.
Excellent, thanks very much. Next question was, what are the long-term effects of COVID-19 on this type of relationship build? And I think you touched briefly on that on your presentation. Perhaps you could elaborate a little bit more on that.
If I were to say to you a year or 18 months ago that we would be able to have relationships through Zoom or Teams, we wouldn't have even known what we were talking about. But look, we wouldn't have even thought it possible to be able to deliver a webinar, even to and teach to the level that we've been doing for the last year. And so, although it's cold, it's not the same as being in person. It is a substitute, and we have to carry on with this. So, what is the future of political awareness? Well, it's something we have to. We are still going to need leaders with political awareness, because these kind of skills are going to be even more important in the future. Actually, we want employees with political awareness to be able to identify where the organization is now and where it could go in the future. Now, many organizations, many businesses, many services need to revamp, need to repackage themselves, and leaders who have political awareness are going to be able to know how to do that much more than others. So there is a future for political awareness. We wouldn't have ever thought it possible that we would have relationships on Zoom, but immediately after this webinar today, I'm going to a conference, and it's a virtual conference. And so I've met some of those people online. I've been teaching this year to people who I haven't even met face to face. And so we can develop relationships online, and we need people to be even more politically aware, even more than we've ever done in the past.
Thanks very much, Catherine. Our next question is, have you done any work on harnessing constructive politics and countering destructive self-serving politics?
Look, it's an interesting question, and the dark side of leadership, and people will be aware of the dark side of leadership. Constructive politics is about listening to people. It's about understanding their perspectives, and it's really difficult when we see on our TV screens, the political leaders against each other. It's particularly difficult when we see, and forgive me here, but we often see 4 men or 5 men lined up. And I think we want diversity in the voices. And if we have diversity in voices and diversity around the table, I think we're more likely to see a positive aspect of leadership and a positive leadership, as opposed to the dark side, the negative side of leadership. People leading, I did mention this through the webinar, that people, the reason we are leaders, the reason we are being paid in our jobs is because we're doing something for our consumers or citizens we serve. And so leading, the business that I'm in and the company that I work for, the organization that I'm employed by, is not just in it for me. They're actually, it's about serving the public better. And so we need constructive voices. We need people to be able to read situations appropriately. And the dark side, where people are just feathering their own nests and doing things for themselves. And, we see this nationally, we see it in all sorts of levels of politics, and it's a negative thing. And so I think the only way to improve that is really to have better reporting systems. And that's clear, in the lobby and the debate that's going on at the moment within the UK Parliament. But really, we need people to be, to understand perspectives. But I think we'll only understand different situations when we get diversity in politics. And it's coming.
Great, thanks very much, Catherine. I actually think that's the end of the questions now, unless there are anyone else out there who's literally about to hit the send button. I think that's the last of the questions. So it's just left to me to say a big thank you to you, Dr. Jane Lynch, Dr. Catherine Farrell, for delivering this session for us today. Also, a big thank you to the attendees as well. I think you've mentioned during your presentation about the ways you can engage with the business school, things like the MSc in Public Leadership and the MBA and that type of thing. So we have a really active executive education department in the business school. There are lots of ways you can engage with them. They run lots of free to attend breakfast briefings throughout the year. We've got a range of various paid accredited and non-accredited courses, things like the Exec MBA. We've got a shorter version, which is the LBA, and of course the Masters in Public Leadership. They've kindly offered any attendees of these sessions a small discount towards the LBA and also the Lean Six Sigma program as well. So we'll send you details of those over after this session. And then finally, we'll be sending out a feedback questionnaire at the end of the week, just to gather your thoughts and feedback around how you thought the session went. So we'd very much appreciate if you could fill those in for us. We do take time to look at those and think about ways that we can improve future sessions. We're looking to run this sort of thing again. So yeah, we'd very much appreciate if you could take the time to fill those in. So thanks very much, Catherine, and thank you very much for the attendees. Goodbye.
Okay, thank you, everyone.